Hello and welcome to Tips from the Trade by Somms for Somms. That's the name of the game. Basically, what this show is about being a better somm. Things that they don't teach you in the court of master sommeliers. We all love learning the subregions of Vina Verde and the must waits of Languedoc. But really, when it comes down to is how do you run a program? How do you keep your guests happy? And how do you keep your job? Basically, what we're going to do throughout the course of this program is bring in experts, people that you know, people that you don't know, people who have been there and done that. And the whole plan is to share our experience from being there on the floor and running significant programs with our fellow Somms to, we hopefully, make you people a little bit better at what you do from learning from our experiences, our failures and successes. And we want to share those with you and just make the world a better place for wine. My co-host, Gregory Condes, Gregory Condes Wines. We are going to be the constant throughout this show. The variable will be our guests. I know you may have tuned in to see Ian Cobble, or you might have tuned in to see Desi Echeverry, or you might have tuned in to see Kenny Coda. They will all be here eventually. The point of the show doesn't change, though. We are here to talk about wine and wine programs and fun things and things that we've used in the past to run successful programs. And really, that's what it's all about. So we're going to start off with me as the host and Gregory as the interviewee, because Gregory on his own is a serious badass when it comes to wine. He has run Alex Grand Award Restaurant in Vegas, worked with Gordon Ramsay in New York at the London, and Gary Danko in San Francisco, which those are pretty legit places. So I think he's worth talking about with these things. So let's get started here and talk about all right. I kind of led you in. How'd you get here? What brought you into wine, and how did you get here today?
Thank you, Scott Barber. Candidate of Master Sommelier and going to be in Top Somm next week competing. Congratulations to you. It's a pretty strong feat in itself. But to answer your question of how I got and how I got started, I'm sure everybody knows Greg Harrington, who he is and what a great man he is. Well, he's actually the one who got me into the wine business. I was working at Spago at around the age of 18, and I was getting into wine, studying, and I was selling a lot of wine on the floor. And I was given this book called Windows on the World. And this book, Windows on the World, I read it backwards, forwards, sideways, and I started selling a lot more wine on the floor. And one of the managers kind of told Greg Harrington, "Hey, there's this kid that's selling wine on the floor, and he's pretty good. So maybe you should go and just talk to him or something." And we started to get to know each other a little bit, and he let me sit in on a few tastings that he would do, these big tastings. It was Palo Alto, Spago, Silicon Valley, lots of big ticket dollar wines. And so I'd sit in, and he was so kind to give his time to me and be really just positive. And I saw wine, I was like, wow, looking at him, flies around all over the world, tasting wine, writing all these awesome wine lists. I want that job.
It's funny. I had the same experience. He was one of my intro guys in my intro, and I was looking up there while they're telling us about this thing, and it was like, hey, those guys are really cool. I kind of want to be like those guys.
Yeah.
And that's what got me into it. And how many people out there right now are working the floor as a server or have some kind of interest in wine that that can take root and turn into something more than that, and it can take you all the way. The important thing is we've all been there. We've all had that moment where the spark lit and got us to go into it.
Yeah.
Apart from Greg, who are some other mentors, and what have they taught you? What has impacted you professionally?
Larry Stone, Fred Dame, those gentlemen. Also, at the age of 18, I everybody knows who Larry Stone is and what an awesome guy he is. I remember going to Rubicon Restaurant, and this young guy sitting at the bar. Actually, I couldn't even drink anything because, but I just wanted to meet him. And I asked him just like really quickly, hey, so like, it's like expecting like the big jewel of information of like how do you get to be as awesome as you are, because for those of you who don't know, Larry Stone is like the Yoda of sommeliers, he's the man. And he said to me, I asked him, so Larry, like, what one thing could you tell me? Isn't this awesome? Like, what's the one thing you could tell me that could that I should know? He's like, here it is. Here's the golden nugget. Always ask the other person how you're doing. I mean, always, it's a very positive sort of outlook. Mm-hmm. And him, Fred Dame, those are some of the people that I personally thank Fred Dame for. Well, many of the positions that I've had at Gordon Ramsay, mm-hmm. and also opening the Wynn Las Vegas, Alex. Also, I must mention Paolo Barbieri as being mm-hmm. one of the awesome legends that I've had the pleasure of working with on the floor. Because Paolo is Mr. Smooth and Mr. Smooth operator, I should say, the smoothest guy on the floor.
Guy, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I think it's important to note that we're throwing around some big names. I mean, if you've seen the movie or whatever, anything about Somms, Larry Stone, Fred Dame, Greg Harrington. These guys are very important people, but they're also real people, and the fact is they might be intimidating to you not knowing them, but we've both had the pleasure to get to know them both fairly well, and you cross that threshold from being like, oh my God, it's Fred Dame, to being like, hey Fred, how you doing? And nobody like these guys wants to bring people along more than these guys. When I was in my tasting class with Fred, he's like, you don't have to. You don't owe me anything except the next you, and that's really what it's about. And that's why we're doing this show, is to try to bring along the next generation of people. Now, Gregory and I are nobody compared to those guys, but we're doing what we can to try to help the next people out there to make them better at what they are. So, absolutely. Let's get back to okay. So you started, you became a somm. You started writing lists. You've written several amazing lists, grand award lists. What's your philosophy about putting together a list from scratch? What do you look at when you have a blank slate to write a list? That's
a great question, Scott. And I think it really comes down to, first of all, ideally you have the right location. You have what I mean by that. You're not going to open a 5-star restaurant in the Tenderloin, for instance. It's going to be appropriate to the location. So knowing what the expectations are of the people that have hired you, because if you're probably a sommelier or starting out as a sommelier at this point, you probably aren't owning or operating your own restaurant. So really actually being very clear with the people who give you the reins to a wine program, what it is that they want you to do. Because you probably won't have your own idea of like, oh, I want to have like these really cool like coastal wines, volcanic soils. Yeah. Great. There's probably already a chef that's hiring you to be the wine director, or somebody hiring you. Ask them what view. The question is to ask who's Absolutely. Hiring you what you want. Because if you go in there with your ideas of what a wine program should be, and if you're the owner, and if you're somebody like Shelley Lindgren, that owns and operates your own restaurant, it's been in the business for 15 years before you even open your own restaurant, you have a very clear idea of what you're going to do. But if you're starting off in the restaurant industry from scratch, you probably would be best suited to ask the person who's hiring you or giving you the position what vision they like to see the list be, and make sure that you're delivering that.
Definitely. I think it's very important to know your role, to know what the role of wine is in that program, and to stay within those boundaries. Eventually, after you develop reputation or something that's consistent that you can hang your hat on, you can expand off of that. But really, the most important thing is you're hired to do a job. Do that job the best you can within the boundaries of what it is. If it's a California bistro, don't go nuts with, Zinamavro and Santorini and stuff. Stay with what's going to work, what's going to make your guests happy, what's going to make your program money, and what's going to make your owners happy. And then once you get that confidence, then you start to be able to build from that, and you can create something. But really, do your job, and if anything, err on the side of less and better than really overstepping your bounds. You don't want to do that. All right, let's see. So, we touched on that a little bit with this one. These days, sommeliers are not just pure sommeliers. There are very few restaurants that just have a guy that just does the wine. What do you see the role today of a sommelier in a restaurant? So many of them do other things. They wear different hats. Where does it come down for you?
Well, that's a really good question, Scott, because you wear so many hats and you're doing so many different things. You have to make sure that you're giving value to the restaurant. What I mean by that is that, we just went through this economic downturn. A lot of restaurants, very famous restaurants, closed during that period of time. You saw a lot of wine director positions being eliminated.
First person to go is a Somm.
Yeah, unfortunately. And try explaining that to the accounting department that your position brings in more profit than anybody else on staff, and it's just going to be really tough to. They may actually be on your side, but for some reason that just never gets translated to ownership. That you're gone. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? That means you got to learn other skills. Like what other skills? Like being a good manager and being able to take on more responsibility within the restaurant. But this, you will always maintain your value and your position as if you can give value back to the restaurant. If you can continually give value back to the restaurant by making sure that you have adequate education, making sure that you have training for all of your staff, making sure that the communication is strong, and making sure that you have a profitable wine program. If you have a happy accountant, you're going to have a happy owner. And if you have a happy owner, you're going to have a job for a long time.
I think we can sum it up by saying be worth more than what they pay you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, everybody does that. We run programs that sell millions of dollars of the wine, and they pay us, a fraction of that. And I think they take advantage of the fact that we just get off on doing that, we don't get paid as much as we should. But, that's okay. There is satisfaction in a job well done. And, that's important. But part of getting people to work for you and getting to your program to function at its maximum capacity is training your staff. What are some examples that you've had of staff training methods that have not only motivated the staff and inspired them, but also contributed to your bottom line?
That's a really good question. I've seen the very cookie cutter approaches done out there where the sommelier, the wine director gets a text sheet on the wine and just basically recites the whole thing to everybody and looks like a savant, That's really cool, really, really cool.
Does that really get the staff excited?
No, I don't think it does. One trick that I have done is I have the information posted either the day before or a week before and have the information out there so that you have your team that your staff up to date and up with the education, the knowledge, so that when you're doing the training or the trainings, if you want to call them, it's much more involved. So I would say, ask questions of hey, so did everybody read the information on Solomon Undhof Kogel and where they are in the creme style? Oh, wow, great. Oh, you've had that before? Tell me what your experiences are and how you've ask your fellow staff members, your fellow managers to share information and knowledge, because then it becomes much more of a discussion as opposed to laying down the law of information, which, it just doesn't work.
Well, I think accountability and ownership is key too. When you get your staff involved and they own a wine and they're excited about it and enthusiasm comes across, part of what you're doing is, making them feel accountable and responsible for these wines. And sometimes it's, handing out an assignment and say, okay, this is your wine, go sell it.
Yeah.
But, you have to remain, contests and competitions I'm not that big a fan of, because I don't like everybody selling the same wine to every table.
Contests and competitions and things like that. That's tricky. I would say that you could always do some sort of ask your wineries or your wine purveyors if there's any sort of incentive for like a guest house, or if there's any magnums that they could offer, or wine keys, and you could also ask your purveyors to come do a training for you and just to hand out a wine key or two, or have a bottle as hey, whoever sells the most by the glass this week of this wine gets a magnum, or whoever sells the most of a certain number of wines gets to stay at a house. Because like if you pass that sort of incentive onto your staff, you will become that much more powerful with them, and you get them doing the job for you as opposed for you doing the job.
I also think the important thing to keep in mind with any type of situation where you're dealing with guests is it's guest centric. The most important thing is to get that guest the right wine for that table. Not whichever wine happens to be on special that week, whichever one you're pushing, whichever one you want them to sell, but listen to the guests, interact with them, find the right wine. If it's less expensive than what you want to do, it's not about driving the check. It's about getting those guests happy, so that maybe they tip you a little extra on the end of the night, or they come back and ask for your station or whatever. It's the long game, and that's really what you got to do is play towards the guest satisfaction, making your guests happy, making them coming back to your restaurant to see you for that experience, and that's really the long play, and that's what's important.
Absolutely, I completely agree.
All right, next. So we covered that. Obviously we're both on the other side of the table now, and we're selling wine, and we're bringing wine, and we're working with sommeliers and trying to participate in that part of the equation. Now, tell us some experience you've had when you were on the other side of the table that have shaped your experience now that you're selling wine.
Great question. And I think in all of my buying history, the one thing that I went back to when I started buying wine was one of the interactions I had with one of the legends, in my opinion, in the business. His name's Clyde Betha, and he's the owner of K&L Wine Merchants, which some of you may know as being one of the most reputable wine retailers in the world. And I learned a lot from him about wine and business, but more than anything about respect. And when I was younger, I wasn't always so I was a little sharp, and so
we've all been there.
And one time I was late for an appointment, and I kind of was like, oh well, it's just just a rep, and Clyde told me, he's like, hey, remember that they're human beings, and they have a life, they have families, they have a schedule, and the most important thing, they're giving you their time, and you always have a sense of respect. And so whenever you give an appointment to somebody, you make sure that you honor that appointment, because the more professional you are, the more organized you are and on it, the better it will be for you, and the better it's and so that's how I manage my scheduling and my timing.
Mm-hmm. I always think you're better off in any situation when you look at your suppliers and your vendors as your partners. I mean, these are people that are getting you the wines that are going to make you successful. And so you got to develop those relationships so that when something great happens, they come to you. And a lot of times I would take appointments from people with wines that I really didn't care if I saw or not. But I would help my rep out just because he's trying to fill out a day. And, next thing you know, I would stumble on a great deal or something that would really make the restaurant a lot of money or whatever. And when the allocations came out or whenever there was a hot wine that I wanted to get, I got the email first and I got the heads up on it because, we're partners, we're working together. And, I would throw everybody a bone and try to spread things out so that I was working with a wide group of people that I believed in their books. And I believed in what they were trying to accomplish. And, we're working together. And when you do that, then your reps will go out of their way to hook you up because you're the account they want to see. And, that's an important part of the relationship. I think it's a two-way street. And it's hard to remember that sometimes when you're on the other side of the table. because, everything's about you. Everybody's coming to you, and all these goodies are falling in your lap. And, you got to realize that, hey, it's a quid pro quo, and, we work together.
Well, yes, I agree. And you also want to make sure that whenever you say what you do and do what you say, and say no and say yes, and that all goes back to just being organized. And the more organized you can be, the better off you will be. That
leads us right into some systems.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're only as good as your systems. If your cellar isn't tight, your inventory isn't tight, you don't have much of a program. What are some systems that you employed that, allowed you to get on top of this thing so you can spend more time focusing on your guests, focusing on your staff, and other things apart from the menial stuff that we work with all the time?
How many more shows can we do on that?
Yeah, right.
Well, so I think I was very fortunate to work at a restaurant called Gary Danko in San Francisco, and that was really the founding restaurant that gave me the understanding of having strong systems that I'm very surprised that not many restaurants had in other parts of the country, but and I thank people like Jason Alexander and Christy Dufault and Renee Nicole Cuban for putting together what are the building blocks. Because always remember, like, even you always stand upon, like on the back of the British coin and back of the British pound, it says standing on the shoulders of heroes. And so one should always look at the people before you, because we didn't just like wake up one day and be like, oh, this is how you do it. Mm-hmm. You'll have people that were there that made mistakes probably, and then had really great, clever ways to manage a program. Because like you say, the one thing you want to do is you want to be on the floor with the guests. That's the fun time. Yeah, you want to taste the wine when you can. So what are some of the things that we would do? Like, let's say, for instance, we would put dots on the back of the bottles. A dot only on, like, if it was the last, you only get one case. You put a red dot on a bottle, and that's going to be the last bottle from the whole bin. So that when you would pull that bottle, that's a communication amongst you and the whole sommelier team that wine is 86 or it's sold out. We had a green little dot that would mean that you would have to run to the location across the street to go pick up a case of wine. Another thing that we would do is we would have our days in which we would receive product to be on either a Thursday or a Friday. We had specific days of when the wine would come in. And in addition to that, Kenny, how are you doing?
Late, but hello.
And in addition to that, we had a sheet that would track when the wine came in, and then the next action is to make sure it is set up into the micro, so your computer system, and you would have to like initial and date. Then you had another column where input into the wine list, and then on the wine list it was a awesome Excel spreadsheet. On the wine list there was this one tab where you would put the wine in and the pricing, the spelled out perfectly. Then you would need someone else to double check your work so that you didn't make a mistake. And of course you would have a location in the cellar. I mean, it's a pretty thought out.
Your spreadsheet, Excel is your friend. I think what you're talking about is have as much detail dialed in as possible in your spreadsheet.
Have checklists and that's accountable. So if you walk out, if you go for vacation, the whole program doesn't stop.
Multiple redundancies and things that are foolproof that you can hand off. For me, in my systems, I had a great spreadsheet that I inherited from my days at the French Laundry, which was an amazing system that Paul Roberts put in place, and everybody else was using that. And what I had was extensions of cost, and then multiplied times the bottles in inventory, and I had my markup, and I had my profit, and I had everything extended out. It was all formulas were calculated so that I knew my inventory at the bottom of the screen at a glance. I knew my composite cost of goods. I knew how much wine I had tied up in every wine in the system. So when I go to my management meeting and they'd say, I'd sit down and like, oh yeah, your cost is, 28%. I'm like, yeah, I know. Do I need to sit here? I got wine to order. It's having everything dialed in so that when you plug in a wine, you just tweak the numbers and it's done. And then you don't have to waste time on that because your systems are solid. Kenny, you ran some big programs in Colorado. How did you manage the great wines that you had?
It was interesting because I didn't inherit anything. It was all built. We began very small. We began with about 300 wines, selections, and that grew to 1,200. And exactly what you're talking about is stuff I wish someone would have told me at the beginning to keep better records. And it wasn't until there was an off season, probably about 800 selections at this point, between 1 and 24 bottles of each selection, where I, instead of going away for 2 months like everyone in Colorado does, I stayed. I took every bottle out of every rack, lined them up, and I remade that exact spreadsheet that you're talking about. Not because out of necessity. I was wasting too many time. Every night I was off, I got a call. Where's the such and such? Mm-hmm. And I didn't have those
calls. Yeah.
That word you use. I didn't have those redundancies in place and check.
One of the cellar tricks, if I may add, that at Gary Danko, we had it all numbered, so that like the number in the computer was the same number as what it was in the cellar. It wasn't a letter A, E. It wasn't like a chess looking thing. It was like if you gave it, with all due respect to dishwashers, if you gave it to anybody, if you gave little shit like it comes out,
give it to the owner, they could find it.
There you go. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, there we go. That's perfect. If you gave it to the owner, they could find the bottle, and that's
the key.
That's another important thing is the setup of your cellar. At most places I've worked, I set the cellar up to read like the list, so that you start at the top of the list and work your way around the cellar to get.
There's different ways to skin the cat.
Well, that's one way to do it, but I find it's very effective.
How many times have you gotten 3 bottles of something that you had to take at that second? You didn't have bin space, and that it became a combined bin.
There's a lot of shuffling, yeah.
So when you have 11 bottle bin and you have 7 different selections in that bin. We had 3 different wine cellars at Harmon's, and sometimes it was a game of Battleship. Often it was.
I wanted to ask a question about that correspondence between the organization of the cellar and the wine list. If you're in a restaurant and you're looking at the wine list and you see that there's classifications in the wine list, like full-bodied red wines, do I then expect that if I were to be taken on a tour of the cellar, I find the full-bodied red wines in one part of the cellar?
I actually have I've worked with a wine list like that before, and the unfortunate thing is in that particular cellar, the space was incredibly limiting. And this is a restaurant I consulted for in New York called L'Impero, and it's now it's called Convivio. It's one of Michael White's restaurants, and you actually did have it laid out like that, and it was a nightmare because exactly that would happen. The owner would try and find a bottle of wine. You would
Owners kill everything.
Generally, those are smaller programs, though. Usually, if you were going to arrange a list that way, you're going to have 100 selections, and it's not that hard to keep up with. But yeah, if you're going to do a large list like that, it's a challenge because there's no perfect way to do a list.
Right. But like at Gary Danko, for example, the list is large.
Yeah. So over there, it's all by number. So what we did is that we had goes from 10,000 to 100,000. That's the number, and that's the same system that I incorporated in Las Vegas, and it's the same thing I did in New York because it's perfect. Don't mess it up. And so
wine system.
It's by number. So it's just like that 10,000 through 20,000 is over there, and so forth, and you have your different cellars. Mm-hmm. So it don't matter where the hell you put that wine because you put the number on it. it's got a home, and c'est la vie, and the world's beautiful.
That's the other thing. But that's another part of your spreadsheet that you're going to set up. Is your spreadsheet is going to have the bin number on it. You're going to have your location on that line. So you're looking at the spreadsheet, and what you'll do is you'll print a seller copy of your list with the bin numbers on it. So whoever's looking at the list on your night off is going to look at that and say A6. And they're going to know A6 is over here and it's somewhere in that, and they have to pull a couple bottles, but they're going to find the line.
And going back to your Dewey Decimal System, before that intranet thing, when you went to the library, you thought you knew the topic, the book you were looking for, and sometimes there was a book that was the same topic you didn't know you were looking for, and you found it. It's the same thing. If everything's in some type of order, someone might be going down to find one bottle, can't find it, but they look one bin over. That was the old saying. Did you look a bin up? Did you look a bin down? One over? You'll find it. It's there. Trust me. It usually wasn't, and I got in trouble.
Which brings us back to every sommelier's bane is has anyone ever had a cellar that was big enough?
No. You keep buying.
No matter how big it is, you're going to have space problems. So it really comes down to how you shoehorn those bottles in there. And, really that's the key that's a big part of your success of running a good program is how tight that cellar is, how organized you are, how much you can be on every single bottle that's there. And that gives you time to do other things that make you successful.
Well, the thing is that you don't run a wine program in a day. You run it on a daily basis, and you need to be consistent in You need to be consistent in all of the actions that you take. So let's say, for instance, if you have certain hours of the day that you meet with purveyors, or if you meet with purveyors on certain days of the week or times of the month, and if you have your products delivered on certain days of the week, if you have systems in place, and if you're organized, you're gonna the world is gonna be your oyster, and
Absolutely.
You're gonna be. The thing is, here's what's gonna happen: is that you're gonna be employed for a very long time, and you're gonna be very well paid, regardless of any certification or title that you would ever think to have. There's a few names like Daniel Jonas and Raj Parr that would easily.
Can we get you?
No, my question forced me to come up here to ask you a question. When you're dealing with such expensive wines in a portfolio like a Gary Denko's, do they have a digital audit of the wines at this point? Is all those wines audited, or is it on a trust situation with the sommelier?
Yeah.
Well, like with
inventory.
With the
yes.
inventory,
Yeah.
is it real time, or people putting in their pockets? You've always had that kind of.
On those wines, it's real. Like it's
Real
trusting
time.
the wine director or the
Is it because now you can have the digital opportunity to do real-time auditing and real-time management of that inventory portfolio of that wine, of that kind of extent of a portfolio. So
Great
that's
timing.
my question.
That's
What's your name, by the way?
I'm Sheree.
Sheree, nice to meet you,
Nice to
Sheree.
meet
So
We were just about to go into that. We were talking about.
I have wine luxury,
So-
and I'm a technology girl.
So let me just make sure I got the question right. You want to know if like an expensive wine like
Well, yeah.
Petrus or Lafite or any of those
I'm
things.
dealing with we're dealing with global people are looking at this, and they're managing either the restaurant owners or they're managing large portfolio of wines that they're trusting a staff to manage.
Right.
Do you have the opportunity or utilize digital formatting to manage that portfolio of wine real time when it's on the table or served up, or when you're taking it out of the containers?
Yeah.
Are you utilizing this now?
Yeah.
And what do you think about the industry for digital? That's my
Definitely.
question.
Yeah, those systems exist.
Yeah, they do exist. There's companies called Real Wine Lists,
Binwise, yeah.
that do that. And then there's some, like if you go into Las Vegas, you have their own manufactured systems that, unless it's a wine that's by the glass, which obviously eliminates it from this conversation of what we're having, it is controlled to the bottle. So if you've got, in Vegas, that cellar was nuts.
Definitely.
And you've got like 8 wines from the 1800s,
Yes.
And wines that cost, $30,000 a bottle.
Yeah.
Actually, that's,
And is,
There's systems where there's a barcode on every bottle, and you scan as you leave the cellar. You can scan it.
We didn't have that at that time, but it was still controlled to the bottle.
And in Vegas, is there a way to audit the demographics of who's buying that bottle of wine and the timing of when they're buying that wine? Because when you market or get more of that type of wine for events,
that's more knowledge, that's data.
That's more CRM at that point.
Well, okay. And you'd have to be able to put that in.
Back at that later.
There are reporting systems that are linked into POS that'll tell you how a table is performing throughout the night.
Right.
And you can say that table from 8 o'clock is your money table.
Well, there are systems that can do that. There's certain events yearly at Vegas. There's CS and things. Those clients are coming in. Yeah. Do you have a certain types of wines or prefers or up the ante in your portfolio to serve up during those times? Like certain groups, like certain types of wines. I don't know. I mean, data sifting now is available.
Knowing your customer is huge, but I think that is something that you only keep for your high-end whales and those guys that come back and drop like 20, 30 grand every time.
If I can jump in, see, I think that's treading on some really dangerous ground for a floor sommelier that should be going to every table as a blank slate and not having expectations. Hey, this is table 75. Table 75 averages a $350 bottle. And that's going to push you to not have the empathy to that table at that moment. And that's the most important thing that every sommelier should have. I don't think a floor sommelier shouldn't look at every table as a mark. And we're here to maximize revenue only. No, we're here to control the guest experience.
Absolutely.
Much more important than selling a big bottle of wine.
A question though too, like do you use the digital with your team? Like do you use WebEx or anything to educate the team of the story of the wine so they can have those stories like where the wine came from so they kind of can be educated as a suite before like say this is, from...
Most of the time it's more direct.
Okay.
It's standing across from them in lineup, telling them the story.
But this is where it's going. And actually we're doing that ourselves at Gregory Condes Wines, is we're actually putting doing tastings of the wines on a video format and have it available for wine directors and sommeliers to use to just to hear.
Right.
And also to share that with their staff and people to go and access for the whole world to see.
Because it's always the story of the wine. That's what makes the mystique for us here now.
Absolutely. I also think, it's same information, different format. I think with the younger people, I'm in my 40s, so I can say younger people. As these 21, 22, 23, 24-year-old kids are getting into wine, which hasn't happened, we used to have filing cabinets full of folders of all the POS. We had all the stories. It was written. And that's how we looked. We had the books. We pulled it down. We read it. Now it's all. We got things here that people. I think I broke it. And that is where it's going. And that I think a new floor sommelier is going to be a lot more apt to do research on something digital.
The magic can be shared so easily now.
And you can catalog different vintages. I mean, there's just more information available.
Technology is a great tool, and there are lots of applications for it. But I think it's back to what Kenny was talking about and what we were touching on earlier was it's about that connection with the table and with the guests and making sure you find the right wine for that person.
Absolutely.
And, that's why you're out there.
The only time that really, there's different ways you could find that information to be useful. What she was just mentioning is that if you have a business table maybe that is coming in for dinner and that doesn't want to have the talk. and then they're like, hey, I just need you to pick a bottle. You already know what I like. I got to seal the deal. Just bring the good stuff. That is when the knowledge becomes, then your tip becomes huge.
No, talk about seasonality events. When I was in Telluride, it was a very seasonal market. And we didn't always have a $25 or $30 wine by the glass, but Christmas and New Year's week, we absolutely did.
Yeah.
And by using that type of we knew it because we did it every year. And we could tell you, this 4th of July weekend, we're going to make this. We need to have this on the wine list.
Right.
Floor story. We all like our floor stories,
right?
Yeah,
floor stories.
Absolutely.
This touches on exactly what you said. We had a lot of Hollywood types come into Telluride, and a very well-known producer came in to see me and said, I have a very important dinner coming up. I don't want to spend more than $400 on a bottle of wine, and this is what I want. I want it to be Napa. I want it to be Cab. I want them to know what it is? Maybe. I want it to be a little niche-y, so I don't want it to be an Opus 1. And I started to tell him some examples. He said, stop. I don't want to know any more than this. I just want the bottle to come up to the table, and I want them to keep coming up if we need them. And that was it. So it's exactly what you're talking about. They didn't want the list. They didn't want to talk. They didn't want anyone at the table, period. And it's a beautiful thing. I wish I had that table every night.
Definitely. I mean, it's funny when you say that, because when people turn the choice over to you, I mean, the pressure's on.
Oh, yeah. Over-deliver every time.
I mean, it's a great feeling, but you're also kind of nervous. But it's also one of the greatest feelings is when you come out with a bottle and you're about to rock somebody's world, and they have no idea what's about to happen to them.
You hope.
And you pour that taste in the glass and you watch them react, and it's like, yeah, got it. I mean, that's
the best
part of why we do it. That's a big part of why we do it.
Or sometimes if you're serving that bottle that's like 15 or 20,000 and you just want to make sure that they're not going to return it. That's a really big, that's a
very different situation.
That's a moment of like,
but all right, okay. And actually, that brings up a topic, though. I mean,
how you handle bottles being returned.
How do you handle? Maybe people that order a fancy bottle but don't know what it's supposed to taste like, and you guys have both been in that situation.
Unfortunately, well, number one, until you get to a certain rarity more than price point. When the guest says the wine's corked or flawed, it is. You take it back and you figure out what to do with it. You don't ever engage the guest. How many times have we all heard about the idiot sommelier that questioned my ability to detect TCA when I've been rated just under James Lalby as the world's greatest TCA? Look, the customer's always right, and I'm sorry. Even when they're wrong, they're right. Now, rarity, I think that's a little pre-conversation you have with the guest about the expectations of what a 1974 Cheval Blanc is going to taste like.
Or 45 Mouton.
But when you're talking about like that question of challenging them or whatever, it really comes down to like, what are you going to win?
You're going to lose.
But even if you win, there's no benefit to it.
No, you win, you still lose.
Exactly. So you're right. Big deal. Your customer's annoyed.
Well, and that's hold on. I mean, I can't. When you offer that wine to the guest and it's got TCA, or even if first of all, you need to take that bottle back.
Absolutely.
Like, don't even.
You're right.
Right. Stop.
I'm sorry I served.
Right.
You just take it back. Now, if you're walking that road of rarity wines, I mean, let me tell you, man, when you start, there was a point when we worked in Vegas, and Paolo Barbieri, if he's watching, will totally remember this. But if the bottle costs less than $1,000, we weren't going to open it almost, It's got to be so you can give it to the. Right. So I mean, it's.
Those are the days.
So first world problem.
Yeah, first world. No. So when you're off, when you're taking the guests down that road, you better know what guests you're taking down that road and how you're gonna First of all, you need to ask the guests questions of what wines they've had before, because if they're cab drinkers and you're going to show them Romanée Conti, my friend, you have got a big problem.
Well, you got to go back to sommelier 101.
Not if their favorite wine is Sloan.
But pull it back to, not even crazy expensive wines. First time you sell a Colli d'Estaurant to someone who's never had one, you better, any Sauvignon as compared to a Vouvray or New World Chenin Blanc.
Or even a Chinon.
You had better set some expectations to make sure.
I had that situation with a $30 Chinon on my list.
Ask the guest to describe the wine for you. Don't ever ask the guest to tell you, do you like big, rich? Never use that language.
Name brands.
Name
brands until you hit that intersection.
Definitely.
I like crisp, fresh whites. What did you have last night? I had Rombauer Chardonnay. Boom. Whoa. Okay.
It's true.
And now I know where we're going.
Yeah. There were times when
was that a ruthless plug?
Oh well, I came from Dallas, so I'm used to that. But there were times when buzzwords would come up, and it's like, well, I like Chardonnay.
In the mail.
Of course, you're from Dallas. Yeah, of course you like Chardonnay. But I don't want anything too oaky, and I don't want anything too dry. I want it dry. Well, you ask them the question, what do you like? They like Rombauer. Well, okay, I'm not going to go pull them a Chablis.
No.
Because they said they like dry and they don't want oak. If I listen to them, that's what I would pull. I have to kind of work in between.
You have to ask the question of ask for brands, what wines, what brands, and maybe you don't say brands, just say what producer, what winery did you have?
Floor story number 2.
Yeah.
And this is the growing pains.
Floor stories.
Yeah, this is the growing pains of a young somm. Good customer, comes in once a week, not the biggest spender in the world, but are consistent and great, love them, and has a habit of drinking very big Chardonnays. Stay on the Chardonnay topic here. And she says, Kenny, I want a wine that sees no oak, high acid, and is all mineral. And I know her price point. She likes being at $30 to $50 price point. Great, I've got a great Petit Chablis for you. Yep, 5 minutes. Boom, go down, get the wine, make sure it's cold. She liked it colder. Present it, serve it. You would have thought I just poured her a nice, hot, steaming glass of Panther piss. The look on her face. This is horrible. I've waited on this woman for a long time. I know what she likes. I ran downstairs and got an ice-cold bottle of Mer Soleil. The ripest, oakiest bad boy I could find. I didn't let her see the label. I said, sorry, and I just brought a glass. Is this better? This is what I'm talking about. I listened to wine speak. I didn't listen to experience. Mm-hmm. She had just been in another town and heard a sommelier talking about his favorite Chardonnay. It's probably describing a Chablis. So she ordered what she thought I wanted to hear her order, but she wanted to drink what she wanted to drink. Your sommelier isn't important. Sommelier really doesn't care what you drink as long as you're happy with it. Right. We don't grade you. We don't judge you. We make fun of you, but we don't judge you.
Yeah. But, that's important is like, where's the next step? Do you pour that and allow them to continue to think that they're drinking dry, unoaked wines? Because the next person along may not be as sharp or
you educate as far as they want you to educate, and you only go as far as they want to go. Do not engage. Let them engage you. It's just like working on the floor 101. You never extend your hand to a guest. You let the guest extend their hand to you, sort of thing.
I agree with that. If she would have said, well, let's talk about that first one. Why did you bring me that? Had she engaged me and asked a question, that's your invitation to maybe drop a little knowledge or opinion, maybe not even knowledge. In that particular case, it definitely wasn't the situation. But I don't like pushing anything on anybody.
Sometimes I would do that to help, to say, this style of wine that you like, it's great wine. I don't carry anything that's not great. But really, the style you're looking for is more of a, richer, more of what I call a California style. So if you go and tell somebody that, then that's what you like. And try to, say that there's no real judgment here involved. There's nothing wrong with whatever. We carry wines for everyone. But, help them to describe accurately what they like, because that's really what it's about. Is to make sure that for that next person that encounters them that may not know how to read them as well, so that they can describe what they like and get what makes them happy. Well, let's see, any more floor stories or what else we have here?
Well, I was late, so I missed a lot. So
ladies and gentlemen, Kenny Coda. Let's go into the puffery aspect of the show here. Kenny was
Jacques Puffer from Sure.
Yes, Arbois. No, Kenny was at Harmon's in Telluride for a number of years. Came out here and took over Rudd in Napa Valley, which people have heard of. It's a very good wine. And now he's working for Malbec and Malbec. So he's made the transition from the floor to supplier side, and maybe you can explain a little bit about what that was like.
Well, a little naive. I think Telluride's a pretty small pool of people, guests, and other wine professionals, and Aspen had a big shadow on us with Jay Fletcher, Richard Betts, and Bobby Stuckey. Kind of set our example of what a great sommelier was. Sorry. I definitely wanted to grow in the wine industry. Instead of staying in a restaurant, I went to a producer, and I moved out here to Napa Valley thinking, I'll work for this Rudd winery, whatever, for 6 months, and I'll be a floor sommelier in Napa in no time. Wow. And then I found out how dynamic Les Rudd and everything he has going on. Definitely got sucked into the machine, which is awesome because it's first rate everything he does. Press Restaurant, Dean DeLuca, Oakville Grocery, Edge Hill. 209 gin. I don't get paid by them anymore, for the record.
It sounds like you're describing a NASCAR there. You know?
Kinda, but
Your check's in the mail.
thanks. But it was really fun for me because I got to move into a role where I was traveling the country talking to experienced sommeliers at the Rajpar, at the master sommelier level, but also the dude who last week had just taken over the 200 wine list because there was no one else to do it. And that's actually the most fun, is hearing these stories, answering questions, and giving my advice, which is worth exactly what I charge for it, nothing. And it's fun because you get to see trends all over the country, and you can start putting together, wow, wine consumers are liking this, not just because it's popular in one city because they just had a wine festival and someone plugged all about Greek wines or something, but because you really see the micro trends and you see the direction. So when you get to see a lot of wine lists over the country, you see how the consumer is changing. And I'm going to stick with Chardonnay, and Chardonnay used to be a one horse pony in America. It was ripe. It was usually moderately to heavily oaked. It was lower in acid, and you had a little residual sugar. And that's what Chardonnay was. Now I think the average wine consumer is as comfortable ordering an unoaked Chardonnay as they are an oak Chardonnay. And as soon as we can get them to realize that Syrah is like that and Pinot is like that every grape has multiple growing conditions, I think I got off track.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's exactly what we wanted to hear. And it leads us into, I know people are looking at these wines on the table thinking, okay, what are these guys drinking? And so we'll just go quickly over what's on the table here. And of course, for a sommelier show with Somms drinking wine, what are we drinking? Which bottle is empty? The Riesling. This is Solomon und Hof, Kogel, Grosse Gewachs von Stein 2010 Riesling. It's awesome. It's pure. It's great. Love it. The next one, speaking right of what Kenny was talking about, Beauregard Chardonnay, very old, traditional style Chardonnay from Santa Cruz Mountains.
This is the Ben Lomond?
Yeah, Ben Lomond for everybody taking theory exams. This is one of those AVAs you might get asked about. So yeah, there is actually a wine from that appellation. In fact, they created the appellation. But
anyone needs a Chardonnay by the glass and they don't taste this, they're insane.
It's pure, it's clean, it's great. Next, Love Drunk. This one sitting over here. This one, you might want to call this actually pink Chardonnay, because that's what it is. It's 85% Chardonnay, a little bit of Pinot Noir in it. It's from our friend Andre Mack, another sommelier, ex-French Laundry and Per Se. He has an incredible knack for graphics and design. And
Axl Rose doesn't look like that anymore.
Yeah, this is the poster for Love Drunk. It's great.
He's like a 3-liter now.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. And then finally, Kaluna CVC,
Keg.
Chalk Hill producer, making amazing Bordeaux wines that, first time when I was in this wine, I was like, wow, this is like Saint-Emilion. It's brilliant stuff. So, Gregory, you got anything to say about these wines, or?
No, I mean, these are wines that are meant to enjoy and gastronomy wines. One thing I'd like to say about what our company does and what the whole idea of what this is that we're the sommelier. So we're trying to give information freely and just to help everybody out there be better at their job. And so that's what we aim to do. We aim to do service. So like when you think of what a sommelier, does, has a wine program, the guest comes in, you serve them the wine that is best suited to them by, taking care of their needs. You have it at the right price point. You bring everything perfect as often as all the time. Hopefully. That's the aim, to be anticipatory to the service. And so what we do is we want to give great service as well. So we're just going to have every week, somebody else here to share that information, to give value back to the great sommelier community, which we've all been a part of and very, very happy for. And then the last little thing is that just to remember that, as a wine director, sommelier, you make decisions every day. And just always remember to try and make the
the good decisions, make as many good decisions as you possibly can. And what that does is going to build up your change. The more good you do, the more true and the more if you look at the business of your program as a business owner, making it good for your chef or for your owner, whoever it may be, and the same thing for your staff, the more change you're going to build up, because you're going to make bad decisions from time to time, and it's okay. And that's just going to take a little change out of your deposit, if you will. But you can't continue to make bad decisions, because then you're going to run out of change. So the idea, what I'm saying is that just continue to make good decisions, and we're going to have good ideas and insights here to share into the future. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it all comes down to, if you make your guests happy, then it's going to reflect back on you.
Always look at the guest experience, and sometimes the best changes aren't this new section you put in, the newest, hottest wine that all your friends are drinking in the tasting group. It's actually what's going to make the guest interaction better, smoother, more enjoyable for them. Those aren't the fun changes. Those aren't the changes your buddies are going to be excited about. They're the changes your guests are going to be excited about, which will get them coming back, trusting you more, asking you to go deeper in your knowledge bank, and will let you show off more. It's a trust relationship.
Absolutely.
Always with the guest first.
So, well, that's the first show. I hope that we're off to a running start here, and look forward to seeing us back here again next month with a new guest, and we'll talk about some of the same things, talk about some different things, get different perspectives about what we do, and I hope you enjoy it and get something out of it, and it's useful for you. But thanks for checking it out.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers.